is, Amy.
Powered by Riverside.
That's the way. All right. Good morning to our listeners around the world. I am living the dream, recording today from Oregon, Eugene. I have not got my partner in crime, Mr. White, with me. Had to leave him back in the land of the Oz. But I am joined by two spectacular educators today. I have Amy Shackett. Is it Shacken or Chacken?
Chacon.
Chacon. It was neither. Wonderful. And I have also Sean Duncan here with me, who are lot educators who just founded their own school. So we are going to hear a lot about their story today, how that came to be, and find out a bit about what makes them tick in education. So, Amy, we'll kick off with you first. Can you tell us the schools that you went to, and the universities that you went to and what you studied?
Absolutely. So I grew up in a small town in northern New Mexico called Taos. And so the schools that I went to there are the local elementary schools. So my high school was Taos High School. I come from a much smaller town outside of Taos, very rural, and that's called Arroyo Hondo. So Arroyo Hondo Elementary, which actually doesn't exist anymore. But I graduated from Taos High School, and I went to both of our state schools, New Mexico State University, as well as the University of New Mexico. But where I really found my home was in California, at California State University, San Marcos, which I absolutely loved. And I got my undergraduate degree in human development with an emphasis in child development. And then where I really, really found my people and my calling was at San Francisco State University in the Social Justice and Equity in Education program. And that's where I got my master's degree in education.
Fabulous. That makes so much more sense to me now about what you're doing. And Sean, tell us about you. Where did you go to school and universities?
So I grew up in New Jersey. I went to St. Anne's Regional School for K to 8. And then I went to Wildwood Catholic High School. My undergrad was done at Loyola University, Maryland in Baltimore. After that, I taught for a while, and then I went back to school for my leadership and education program for master's with the National Louis University, which I did remote, like sort of in a distance learning context, but that's in Illinois. And then the program that has definitely set me on the course that I'm currently on now is my school psychology program. I became a specialist in school psychology about 8 years ago through Nicholls State University in Louisiana.
You've been around. Oh. That's all over the place, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. So I want to know then. So the whole reason of this podcast is about identifying those teachers that have really made a massive difference in your life. So you guys have. We'll go deeper into what you've actually done and created and the moral purpose behind it all. But there's been teachers along the way who have kind of guided you and shaped you into the way that you think and act. So we'll start with you, Amy. Is there a teacher that you can name, that you can remember, that had a massive impact on your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of so many teachers. My first grade teacher was she was just one of the most lovely human beings on the planet. And I don't, when you're so young, you don't know all the things that a teacher does that makes it magical. But I just remember having a really magical experience with her. I remember very vivid moments of hugs and conversations and tales and ways of explaining things, and that I don't even remember in my adult life. I think more significantly, when I got into high school, it was it's a small high school with not a lot of opportunity. And there were some teachers there that were opening little windows for students who hadn't been to other places. So I think of two individuals that really made a difference in my life. One was our science and biology teacher. And I think he's still a teacher to this day. I mean, his role was really just to bring the sciences to students, and whether we were able to master the content or not, we were always welcome. That made a huge difference for me, was being able to walk into his class, and even if I had fallen asleep in there the day before and was mortified, there was no judgment. It was a new day, and I was able to sit down and do the science lesson. And if I hadn't passed that test, he was always available. And I remember he was even there in his classroom when our soccer team, we created the first girls soccer team for our high school. We scored our first goal after probably 9 games. It was a very magical, special moment because we've been working hard for that goal. And he came running out of his classroom to cheer us on. That's a really special educator. So he made a huge difference in my life.
That's beautiful.
And then my
awesome.
University professors, obviously.
So now's the time to name drop, because I think the whole point of this this podcast is that the teachers are all along the way, they're the heroes. They have those connections with you. They challenge you in the right times. They support you in the right times. So they often won't get a platform for somebody to actually say their name and the impact that they made. So tell us about your professors as well.
Oh, and you're going to have to forgive me because I'm 45 at this time, so I may not have some of their names correct in my mind, especially from undergraduate. My cultural anthropology undergraduate professor changed everything about how I saw the world. And she did so many things in and outside of our university experience. I mean, we had field experience opportunities in the class, and I took a couple of different courses with her. I would go and see her in her office hours, and she'd offer books. And I don't remember her name, but I remember her face, and I remember so many details of all that she presented to me in that time. So one person I'll never ever forget, despite the fact that I'm not going to be able to name drop on that one. I'm so sorry.
We'll tag her in. You'll find her name, and then we'll tag her in so that she knows how special she was. And Sean, so tell us for you, who was your person or people throughout your schooling?
Yeah, so I have 3, and I'd say that they all kind of played different roles. So in high school, I had a teacher, and I went to Catholic schools growing up. Because that was really important for my parents. And even though I'm like full in public educator in my life right now, but I had a theology teacher. She also taught French. I had her for theology, but she just showed up for kids all the time. Like, it wasn't like she did these dynamic things in the classroom that I remember and blew my mind, but like, living in a small community and seeing somebody who's like shows up to your cross country meets, checks in, 10 years later, sends you a Facebook message. Through this day, she's still like, I'm so proud of, what you're doing, and to encourage and connect like that. And her name is Mary Kane, and she's actually fighting cancer right now. So all positive intentions out to her. And she's still super involved with my high school. So Miss Kane is well loved in our community. So she had a huge impact on me, just to sort of show that like how you show up for your kids every day isn't just in the year that you're teaching for them. In college, I had a phenomenal professor. Her name is Jane Edwards, and she was a history professor. And she was a very extravagant. She would show up to classes dressed in medieval gear, and she would teach we were in the 1500s, she was a person from that time. And she was really good at getting me excited about my major, which was history. And she just got us super into the content. And she told it like a story, like it was, a soap opera or like an Us Weekly magazine story. That just made it super juicy, to help us remember the details that mattered. And then my last best teacher that I remember, he passed away, I think 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. I was in my school psychology program, and he was actually a terrible teacher. And I'm not, he would laugh at that. Like he taught us about learning theories, and he would talk about how terrible it is to lecture. He's like, but that's just what I do, so I'm going to keep lecturing. You're going to listen, I'm going to talk. And he is the one who actually connected me to the research on direct instruction and how its historical impact on student outcomes across the U.S. It was, yeah. So I'm super thankful to him, and he was so proud of me and my wife. Both went through the program when we saw him at a conference, and had told him that we had gone to like a NIFTY training and gotten trained up in some of the reading mastery programs. His name is Larry
fabulous.
Stell.
Fabulous. That's hilarious though that he knew what worked, but I'm not going to do it. But at least he inspired you to go forth and touch many lives. That's cool. All right, so I want to know then. I want to go in deeper into what you guys are doing now. So as I said at the start, you founded your own school, and as I am a principal at Mastery Schools Australia, which was also a school that was founded by two courageous, crazy. There's a fine line between courage and a bit of madness, where you decide that you're going to go and do step away from the safe and the known and create something that you know is going to work. So tell us all about it. So it's the Thrive School.
Amy, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so Thrive Community School is the name of the school, and it's in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I think there were a couple balls already in motion, Sean. When I joined the team, I was at the time working as a teacher. During the pandemic, I've always worked in the realm of education, but I hadn't been a teacher yet. And during the pandemic, I thought, well, no better time like the present to start studying something I've always wanted to do, direct service to students. And so I was in my first year of teaching when Sean reached out to me to talk to me a little bit about what was going on with this new school that was going to be opening or proposed to be opening. And I was like, these are all the things I've ever believed in about education: mastery learning, STEAM education, inclusion and diversity. And I said, okay, I'll do this, but just so you know, I'm really happy at the job I'm at. I really, really, I have a dream job, so I'll help out however I can. Fast forward a year, I moved from that school, jumped full board on with the co-founders at the time to, really get that charter written out, and then we're launching into our second year. So
that's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind.
And so, Sean, tell us a bit more about the. I overheard you saying something about. So why did you want to do this?
Yeah. So I worked in New Orleans, Louisiana for a long time, where there's many charter schools that opened up after Hurricane Katrina. And I was always like, I have no desire to be a principal or a school leader in any way. I'm going to go back. I'm a school psychologist now. I've loved the science of learning that I've learned about, and I want to help people apply it. But my wife is from Santa Fe, New Mexico, where we are located, and I spent some time working in our community in the public schools, and there's so many really good things happening where there's a lot of phenomenal educators, but I really felt like there wasn't enough collective effort within one school happening to have the type of impact that we need to be having on students across the trajectory of their primary schooling experience or their K-8 experience. So I just started to, think about the frustrations that I think many educators and families in our community felt about that lack of collective effort, and tried to harness it and funnel it into the ideas of well, what could we create that would meet the needs that aren't currently being met. We interviewed and met with hundreds of people across 2 years throughout this process to get input on what kind of programming, how does that jive with our own beliefs and expertise. And some of it was a great match, and some of it we had to push ourselves to learn. Yeah, so that was honestly the main thing was we have an opportunity. The work started right before the pandemic, and then it was this awkward time where it's I guess schools are gonna open again, and we're all gonna go back to the workplace, and maybe this will happen. So it was a very unique time to be crafting a vision of what a school is, because the vision for what a school should look like changed drastically in the time that we
It
were
did.
doing
It
it.
totally, it shifted. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just from the need for stronger programming around social emotional learning and making sure kids had community because they had been so isolated. That had always been a part of the school, but it was people were so excited about that, and we really were pushed to define that more. And then just all of the learning loss or unfinished learning from that time. The idea that we had already been planning to use a lot of DI programming in our school and mastery learning was a good fit. So there's a lot of things that the pandemic almost I think made our school an even better fit for our community by the time that we opened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. It was needed before, but people were sometimes not willing to acknowledge it, and then COVID had to acknowledge the lag that was being created in all kids, and even more so in disadvantaged kids or disengaged kids. But so yeah, people couldn't look away any longer because they were at home with their children, seeing the lag. Yeah, having to deal with it themselves, terrifying. Awesome. Yeah. So tell me then how is it going? So that's why you created it, and how's it going, and then what next?
Amy, why don't you jump in?
Yeah,
she's got great perspective.
Well, I was just thinking how is it going? It is big and it's wonderful, and it's I think the timing was just so right, just to, not just COVID, but just for in our area, it was time for a school like ours to open and be available to the community, and that is reflected in parent and family response. There is not a single person that I talk to that has heard about the school that doesn't have wonderful things to say, anecdotes that they've heard from so and so and so and so, and that the anecdotes that are true. And so we started our first year with 117 students, right, Sean?
Yes.
And we had 15 staff members, small staff. Is that right? 15, right?
Yeah, we had 15 last year.
And we started to build culture that we believed in and be able to address the issues that were coming up around how do you team to support kids? How do you team to support adults who are growing in the profession? And that was a really special and beautiful thing. And so now we're kind of doubling. We're doubling the staff. We're doubling the size of the student body. And we're going to see that all happen again and be able to sort of build even firmer foundations of what's already been started. And that's just super exciting to see that come up. but also, just I'm worked as a special education teacher for a majority of the year. There was not one special education meeting that I went into that a parent didn't cry with gratitude, literal tears. And I don't say that just for emphasis. It was really special to be like, my child is seen, my child is heard. You hear me as a parent. You hear my struggle, and you're here with open arms for our children, and providing a service that's valuable. And we haven't seen, whether it be social emotional growth, reading growth, maximizing their talents. There was just so many stories, and walking out with tissues. I always started to make sure to bring the tissue box with us, because um, what can be a very daunting meeting where you go in to talk about kids' goals was actually such an inspiring community moment. um, so I would say overall our school is doing fabulous, and there's a lot of work to be done. And I believe we have, and I've worked with a lot of educators throughout my life. I've seen a lot of folks in the field, and I feel like we have the best group of humans, both adult and children, that are going to set out to really make this school a wild success in our area.
That's fabulous. So fabulous. And I totally agree. At my school, every student is on an individual learning plan, and those previously, I used to love connecting with parents. I don't know, but it just didn't. It always felt like it was surface level, and we're not actually really talking about the nitty gritty of what's going to make a difference for this child. And it's that first meeting of unpacking what they really want and the realistic starting point. But then the review meeting, oh my gosh, that's then you need boxes and boxes and boxes of tissues for the actual difference that's been made, not just in the classroom, to every part of their life. It can have such an amazing impact. I love it. Thank you so much, Amy. And so what's the capacity of your school? So you're doubling in size. And so does that take you to full capacity?
No, so we'll be at about 250 students next year. We're authorized to have an enrollment up to 633 students that we could grow into. Our current space that we're in doesn't allow for that in its current form. So we can grow by about 100 more students maximum, 80 to 100 in the next couple years. So we're also working on like facility planning, and how we get what size we want to grow to actually be able to maintain our programming at a high level. We don't have to go to 633. There's definitely a need for 633. We're going to grow much slower after this to kind of make sure we're being as responsible as we can with our programming.
Yeah, get it right. So that then if you do get big, even bigger again, it's right for more kids. Yeah, it's that constant toggle of how much is too much, but then you want to be able to serve as many kids as you possibly can to change their lives too. Okay, so I'm going to I would love to hear a specific we call them magical moments. So I want to kind of go a bit deeper into what Amy was saying before, about the families and the tears. But so tell us a story of a Thrive community kid who had a big impact on you. I'm going to play the intro music. You guys work out who's going to tell the story. All right, who's doing it? Magical moment.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay. So I'm thinking of a student. I'm the principal of the school, but in the first half of the year I taught reading groups. I love teaching reading, and I'm hoping I can teach a group this upcoming year. So I'm thinking about a student whose family had some real challenges with his education in the first 2 years, both in terms of, I guess, just aspects of school culture and safety, and their child feeling like school was a place that they belonged. But even more importantly, the like
Sorry.
the the like learning and like
This is why my husband should be here.
the
Carry on. Sorry.
I was like, oh, did I say, is that like pulling on the heartstrings? So, the child that I'm thinking of, um, his reading growth this past year, he went from being like practically a non-reader. He had some sound symbol correspondences as a second grader. He's now reading, like he's up to like the 25th percentile in oral reading fluency. He's crushed his goal. His parents sent me videos of him reading chapter books over the summer. And yeah, I just like those things, the wins around learning and building kids' confidence up and their self-esteem as learners is the stuff that like, that's what this is all about. And to see that happen, and that's just one example. There's so many kids who made growth like that.
Yeah, and we know that particularly with reading, that it's about the reading, but then it's about so much more. It's about the access to be able to communicate with people and to understand the world, and it's so much more. So what were you going to say, Amy?
Well, I was just going to say that just as I think about Sean teaching those reading groups, just watching the students respond to that interaction, that one-on-one, I'm just thinking about their smiling faces, because like knowing about the growth is one thing, and then knowing about the kind of the other emotional side is another piece of that magic, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I want to also now, schools are amazing places. I know you're changing lives in there, but it doesn't always go to plan. And we're working with children, and you're working with, 4-year-olds to 13-year-olds. They say the darndest things. They do the darndest things. So I'm going to play an intro for a teaching tale, and give me a story that only teachers can tell. It only happens with teachers.
Teaching tales. Dun, dun, dun.
That's my son.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's great.
What do you got?
So this is where we tell a tale that is like, that's
Teaching
like
tales. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, do you have a good one to start with, Amy?
I'm trying to isolate them. Well, it's probably like more squishy, lovey kind of tale. I just got to be a kindergarten teacher this last year, which I'd never, well, it'd been a long time since I'd worked with such young children, because I'd worked in a middle school setting for so long. I had forgotten so much about this age. So, one of my favorite things was just being able to sit with them. And there would be, mornings where kids who the previous day had been yelling at me and, throwing materials, and then they just come over and sit in my lap, or they come over and just sort of like hover for a minute, and all of a sudden my arm, without me even knowing it, is wrapped around them. And, one student in particular is like very heartwarming to me, like at the end of the year, he said, Miss Amy, I really love you, and I'm going to miss you so much. And that was very heartwarming. One thing on my competitive side, because I'm a very competitive person, and I run, and I consider myself to be fast. I do. And apparently not against a kindergartner. So we took our students were our school's out on this beautiful property and juniper and pine trees. And so we had a little picnic, which maybe that was the thing that slowed me down, was that I'd had some salami and cheese prior to racing my students. But I let any student who wanted to race me down this little canyon that we have. I didn't win a single race. I got to, get up in the sand and I'm like, I'm really going to do this. And I didn't let them win. I gave it my best effort. And I'm a person that gets up and goes for morning runs every day, and I could not beat a single one of my kindergartners. So I think those are moments you don't get to see all that often in the outside of the classroom world.
It's so true. That's very cool. That doesn't happen in a bank, Amy. That doesn't happen. That
Nope.
happens only in schools. That you can be really put in your place about your physical capabilities by a 5-year-old. I love it. That's great. Do you have one, Sean?
Yeah, so there's just so many funny ones. I'll tell two quick ones. So first day of school, as a new school, a lot of new faces. We had met a lot of the families and kids during orientation, but that was also a many adults involved process. So I did not master every single name and family at that time. I'm very good at that. But day one of school, mom walks up to me for one of our students, and she's like, "Hey, just so you know," and this is her son is a kindergartner. She's like, he runs away all the time. Like, you're gonna have to keep your eyes on him. He's a runner. So I was like, no problem. We know that's there's a lot of younger kids that still think that it's sort of a game and they're gonna run away from you. Except I got the kids mixed up when I was out helping at recess. So I'm watching the wrong kid, and the kid that is the runner is way running off an acre away. So then I'm I literally have to run after the kid, even though that's not what you're supposed to ever do, because I may lose him because it's like a forest. So we were able to do a lot better with the supervision, but on day one I was this is not what I was imagining would be happening on the first day of school of this new school we opened. Everything else was perfect, but had to go running through the arroyos on our campus. And then about 2 weeks later, our 6th grade teacher had said the kids could bring something in on Friday for show and tell. And all of a sudden, I see the teacher come down and she has a cat on her shoulder. And I'm like, what happened? Did that cat live on the property and sneak into the building? She's like, no, a student brought the cat in his school bag to school, and the bag was moving around on the floor. And so I called his grandma. I was like, hey, he brought a cat to school. She's like, I thought it seemed like I shouldn't let him take it, but he said it was show and tell, and he said that he was allowed to. I was like, you know what? If it's ever involving animals, you should just double check with us in the future. So we had a cat.
Oh, that's fabulous. That is so good. Oh, awesome. All right. Well, so I want to finish off. We're all at this National Institute for Direct Instruction. So it's amazing to have all these like-minded individuals here. We're in the heartland of direct instruction, where the great Sig Engelman was born. Well, actually, I don't know if he was born here. He was educated here. The Brain Trust created DI right here. So what have your big learnings been, or what's your imperative behind using direct instruction? Why do you believe it's really important?
Amy, you want to kick it off?
Well, I'm new to direct instruction, so I learned during the pandemic. Casey, Sean's wife, trained me in it because I was in a school that was supposed to be using but hadn't hadn't really kicked it off. And I said, "Oh, there's this program people had told me that I should be using. What am I going to do?" And she was so generous and, gave me a rundown through Zoom, which was, wow, I just think back to that. So I'm very new to it, but it didn't take long. I mean, even through that Zoom session and implementing it with my students, it was like, and I was not very good, obviously, right? I hadn't really been trained on it, but I was doing it. And the kids had had an experience maybe 3 years before, and they still retained everything. And they retained when you answer on Signal and how to go through and decode words. And they used their fingers to track. And that was really powerful because I'd never seen anything else in the educational space work that magically. So my takeaway here that I'm really excited to be here and then take back with us is just kind of the fidelity of the program and making sure to maintain the fidelity of the program, because I think it can be used. You can use any book, right? But if you're not using it with fidelity, and I just think about how exciting it will be for us to have the growth when we see where are these kindergartners that we've been working with this program, what are they going to look like when they leave 8th grade? I'm super excited to see what is even possible when you have that, because I've never experienced it.
Awesome. And Sean?
Yeah, and I would say for me, like I've been trained. I actually have done training. I've worked for NIFTY as a trainer and an implementation manager. So on the like program front, like I'm bought in. I want, and because it is so efficient and effective, that's like, let me back up. We use direct instruction at Thrive because our school is like, we're not a university setting to be experimenting and trying and doing research on children. We have a responsibility to use the most efficient and effective methods to make sure kids are learning, especially our earliest learners and our students who have not had adequate instruction or effective instruction in their early days, who are now middle schoolers. Like we don't have time to waste. We need to do this well, and we don't like the margin for error is like zero. So that's one reason. And then like the other thing that I'm super excited to be taking away from this conference is that I've been able to go to 2 really phenomenal sessions. One with Dr. Anita Archer, and another on the CHAMPS behavior, like positive behavior support systems in school. And it's so good to be able to see how, DI programming within the context of that like, these aren't just like random curricular programs to teach. Like they fit within a large body of research and evidence around the most efficient and effective ways to teach students. And when we have things like CHAMPS, how do we explicitly and directly teach behavioral expectations and reinforce them for student success? When we think about explicit teaching in non-DI program areas, how do we apply these evidence-based methods to make sure kids are learning at really high rates? And then within the DI programming, how do we use big DI programs to make sure like all of that is just like, we're ready to like, we wish we had another week off before our teachers come back, but we're going to go bring it right back to our building and jump into a couple weeks of professional development with our staff.
Oh, it's exciting, such exciting times. And it's so empowering for a teacher to, I can only imagine based on what Amy said, your teaching staff have really bought into that moral imperative. But then it's sometimes hard to know. So, but how do I make a difference in every kid's life, every minute of the day that that they're with me? And it is through explicit instruction. When there's no DI programs, that's your hand on heart, knowing where every person in your group is at every given moment. It is possible, but it's not possible unless you're not using something like this, and then there is that guessing. I love how you put that, Sean, that we're not here to experiment on kids. We've got to use actually what works. I'm taking that back with me to the schools that I work with as well. That's powerful stuff, really powerful stuff. thank you. I just want to say thank you to both of you. Thanks for giving your time to talk to me and everyone who tunes in to Teachers Change Lives. And thank you for the work that you're doing at Thrive Community School and having that courage to do something different and to make a big change in those kids' lives. So yeah, so great to meet you both.
Thank you
Thank
so much for
you.
having us.
All right, we're gonna intro out. So thanks so much. I'll see you back at the conference. All right.
All right, sounds good.
Powered by Riverside.